Let's talk Tanya for the 5th of Nisan. In the Tanya of the last few days, we've talked about the advantage of doing a mitzvah with kavanah, with the proper intent, which is a love for God and the desire to connect to Him and an awe of God. And we explained that the revelation of godly energy is much greater when a mitzvah is done with kavanah than if a mitzvah is done without kavanah. And as we concluded yesterday's session, we asked, does that mean that God wants the kavanah or values the kavanah more than He values the actual act of the mitzvah? And in today's Tanya, the Alter Rebbe takes a pause and says, no, that is not the case. A few things. Number one, we have to understand that although here in this world we might think that spiritual is higher and greater than physical, and that's actually true in our reality, but for God, everything is the same. God transcends the physical, God transcends the spiritual, everything is equal to Him because He's infinitely higher than everything. So we can't say that kavanah, our feelings, inherently are more valuable to God than our actions. That's number one. And then there's another point. When we're talking about mitzvahs, we're talking about God's essential will. This is what He essentially wants. And by the way, not for any reason. It's actually a will that transcends logic and intellect. That's a topic all for itself, which we're not going to get into today. But we need to understand this is something that God essentially wants. Why is that important for us to understand? Because when you want something, but there's a reason why you want it, so how much will you want it? It'll depend on how strong that reason is. The stronger the reason, the stronger the desire. But what if there is no reason in the first place? It's an essential desire. Then that desire is limitless. By way of example, if you love something because for a reason, then there's a limit to how much you love it based on the reason. But how much does a parent love their child? Well, there is no reason why a parent loves their child. It's an essential love. And that's why the love also is limitless. So therefore, we can't say if God wants the act of the mitzvah and the kavanah of the mitzvah, and these are both essential desires of God, we can't say that He wants one more than the other. He wants both infinitely. He wants the mitzvah, the act, and He also wants the kavanah. So it's not that God values or desires the kavanah more than the actual act of the mitzvah. Nevertheless, for whatever reason, in a mitzvah that is done just the act without the kavanah, there is a lower level of revelation of divine energy, and if there is kavanah, there is a much higher level, in fact, an infinitely higher level of divine energy. The reason for that, we will find out why in chapter 40. But for right now, we need to just sit with that idea, with that fact, which is there is an incredible value to kavanah, because when you do kavanah, there's so much more of the godly will revealed in the mitzvah. Now, although we are dividing this into two, a mitzvah done with kavanah, a mitzvah done without kavanah. As we mentioned yesterday, in fact, everything divides into four. So there are four different types of mitzvahs. And in tomorrow's Tanya, we will talk about the four different levels of mitzvahs, which correspond to four different levels of revelation of divine energy within the act of the mitzvah.